Clerk will read the next resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 23, honoring Ron Post for establishing Medical Teams International.
Question now arises upon third reading and final adoption of HCR 23. Representative Neerman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In 1979, Ron Post was a successful businessman living in West Salem. One night while watching the news, he saw the horrible story of the killing fields of Cambodia and the terror of the Pol Pot regime, which was causing a mass exodus of Cambodians to Thailand. Within weeks, he had assembled a team of volunteer doctors, nurses, and EMTs who shortly thereafter flew to Thailand and worked in the temporary shelters for weeks. He thought that was the end. Then came the famine in Ethiopia. He took teams there. Then came the Mexico City earthquake. He took teams there. At that point, it became clear that a new organization needed to be founded, so he did. That is how Northwest Medical Teams, now called Medical Teams International, was founded. There was also the earthquake in Soviet Armenia, and because of the reputation of Ron Post, the only American relief agency that was allowed into the Soviet Union was Northwest Medical Teams. In almost every tragedy, man-made or natural, Ron Post got teams there with Northwest Medical Teams. In his book, Created for a Purpose, Ron Post lays out all the stories and reasons why he believes Northwest Medical Teams were so impactful. Helping literally millions of people worldwide, he also started the mobile dental van program here in Oregon, which grew from one van to multiple vans that still run all over the Northwest, providing free emergency dental care to thousands each year. This was a man who was merely a businessman, who saw a need and felt the call that someone had to do something, and demonstrates how each of us might answer that call. Colleagues, I urge you to vote aye with me to honor Ron Post.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Boone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, it was a surprise to me to find out that Ron was the father of one of my new friends here this year, Bill Post. And Mr. Post Sr., you don't know this, but you've long been a personal hero of mine for your work in resilience and responding to disasters around the world. And when most of us either write a check or figure out what to do at home, you've actually been out there on the ground doing it for a long time. And I appreciate it and I thank you. And I hope you will all join me in supporting this resolution. And thank you again for all your service.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Kenny Guyer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the resolution.
To the resolution.
I am really delighted to meet you in person. I've heard about you for a long time. Mercy Corps started in the same year, 1979, out of the same effort with regard to the killing fields. And my husband, Neil Kenny Guyer, and I moved here in 1994 when he was invited to lead Mercy Corps. And one of the things that drew us to the area was how incredibly vibrant the Northwest is in terms of reaching out to other populations. We were moving up from the Bay Area where the population is so much bigger, and yet there's very little effort internationally, really. And one of the things that I knew from the very beginning, I started hearing about Medical Teams International, or Northwest Medical Teams at the time. And I know that there's been huge collaboration right from the start. One of the word that I asked my husband to give me one word about you, and he said gracious. And I think that really set the tone for many years between these two organizations to have collaborated on so many different efforts together. And when I also didn't know that Bill Post was your son until I was on the health committee. This has been a long-held secret from you, but they actually testified in front of the I think it was the healthcare committee that I was on. And then Bill started talking about his father, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Ron Post's son. I hadn't known that. So really delighted to be able to meet you in person. We were not allowed to approach you before this because it was a big secret, but can't wait to come over afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Doherty.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would also like to encourage a vote on this resolution. We've talked about what Northwest medical teams and what the medical teams have done internationally, but I think a lot of you realize what they do on the local level. And after representing a lot of schools that are probably in dire poverty, it was always nice to see the Northwest medical team's dental bus and the mobile dental center. So I appreciate what you've done and how you started out so early on in Oregon and how you've helped in the worldwide, but also thank you so much for what you've done for our local children.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Post.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the resolution.
To the resolution.
Colleagues, please indulge me. I've never thought I would ever do something like this. I want to tell you a story about a businessman who felt the call of God and answered that call. In the 1999 book, Created for a Purpose, which you should have now, Senator Mark Hatfield wrote this: Ron Post has a soft heart and calloused hands. I first heard of him more than 20 years ago when he made a call to my office asking one of my staff if there was any need for medical relief in Cambodia. My staff member assured Mr. Post that there was and encouraged him to do anything he could. And we offered to help as we were coordinating efforts on our own. We did not know at the time that Ron Post was just an ordinary businessman who had seen the evening news and was driven to do something about the situation. But people who are sure of God's calling in their lives are the most powerful people in the world. God had given Ron a vision, and this man was going to take action, quote, unquote. As was said earlier by Representative Neerman, in November of '79, Salem businessman Ron Post was watching the local news, which was detailing the horrors of the killing fields of Pol Pot in Cambodia. He arose from that easy chair and said somebody should do something about this. He contacted Don Clark, who then was a reporter with KEZI-TV in Eugene, which led to a call to Mike Donahue at Coin TV in Portland, which led to a call to Senator Mark Hatfield. He wanted to get a team of doctors, nurses, and EMTs to Thailand in 2 weeks. The first doctor, when asked if it was possible, said, well, you could never expect to have a team ready to go in 2 weeks. It'll take several months to put something like this together. They were there 2 weeks later. The mission trip to Thailand was a grassroots effort, and he wanted everyone in the Northwest to feel a part of it. Thus, their efforts came to be called Northwest Medical Teams. The name was officially selected within days of getting the call to form this team of volunteers, and like everything else, the name just fell into place. Northwest Medical Teams continued to rotate to Thailand over a 6-month period until the conditions finally got better for the Cambodians. After Thailand, Ron went back to his business interests, but he just couldn't seem to put that together. The fulfillment had been stripped away, and spending time making money just didn't make sense anymore. In 1984, powerful feelings about Northwest Medical Teams welled up inside of him. The conviction to form Northwest Medical Teams as a permanent mission could no longer be pushed aside. One evening in 1984, again, watching the news, he saw a tragedy of immense proportion had befallen the country of Ethiopia. I want to read to you a verse from Matthew 25 where Jesus said, I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. He also said in that passage, whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me. Ron Post took that very seriously and always tried to follow in Jesus Christ's footsteps, so off to Ethiopia they went. One morning during that horrible famine in Ethiopia, as he watched nurses walking down a line, choosing who would live or die, literally by how much food they had, Ron spotted 2 elderly women in the distance walking straight toward him. Each had a small plastic bucket in her hand in hopes of finding grain. They stopped just a few feet in front of him, and within a few seconds, one of them started to tremble violently and fell to the ground. Nurses rushed to her aid, but it was too late. She died, just a few feet from help. Later, a photographer took a picture of her and gave it to Ron. She was an elderly woman. When she died, she was lying on her side. Her arm was outstretched. Inches from her hand lay the bucket which had carried her hopes of finding food, and it had dropped from her hand empty. He has that photograph in his office still. The image of that dead woman is etched into his memory forever. God will never let him forget her. In September of '85, the world's largest city was shattered by a powerful earthquake, 8.4 on the Richter scale, and Northwest Medical Team was there, Mexico City. 20 million people were either dead or in a panic. The team was later told that 5,900 major buildings were destroyed or heavily damaged. They rotated for many years afterwards through Mexico City. That experience led to a full-time project in the dump of Mexico City. Thousands of people lived in the dump, not by it or near it, but in the dump, carving holes in the garbage for a place to live, combing through the garbage for food and things to sell. In 1987, 1 year after they'd begun the work with the people in that dump, the director of the ABC television program Good Morning America wanted to tell the story. When the recording was finished, a camera operator put down his camera to weep. The producer cried also. The producer later said, quote, "We have to report on some very shocking and sad stories, but we've never seen poverty such as this," unquote. Colleagues, I've stood in that very same place with Ron Post. I have stood and I have cried in that place. It's horror. But in 1994, an astounding feat was accomplished thanks to the gracious gift of Northwest Kiwanis Clubs and Harry Merlo of the Louisiana Pacific Foundation. They built a school by that dump, and over 400 children will receive an education right away, and that is still going on today. Later, Northwest Medical Teams introduced the idea to begin an industrial sewing school. After completing the course, each woman there would be able to secure a job in a textile factory around Mexico City and thus support their families.
Representative Widener yields his time. Please continue. Thank you.
The Los Angeles Dump Project was one of the most successful programs Ron ever completed. Hundreds of people are no longer trash pickers, but have a more promising future than the life that the dump that their parents and grandparents had known. Many are now working in textile factories, and there is a school to continue educating. There's also a church, a clinic, and a lot of other programs in that dump, if you can imagine that. I think I got my pages upside down. I'm sorry. Well, I'll just move on. While in Mexico, Ron was told that Oaxaca, 350 miles south of Mexico City, had overwhelming poverty with 38% unemployment, and that the Indians living in the mountains around Oaxaca were the forgotten people of Mexico. He sent in teams that taught them how to dig clean wells, to run water, to take care of themselves medically and otherwise. He sent medical volunteer teams into these mountains. He could tell you long stories about flying like this. Northwest also sent dental teams. Another immense problem in Oaxaca was revealed. 5,000 children suffered from cleft lip and palates. Northwest volunteer teams went in to perform surgeries. Then they started doing cataract surgeries to heal the blind. I could go on for days. 1990 in Romania, you remember the children in the orphanages? Northwest Medical Teams took over orphanages after the communist regime folded, and they literally ran the orphanages. In 1991, after Saddam Hussein gassed the Kurds in Iraq, Northwest Medical Teams was there. After the Hutu tribe massacred gazillions in Rwanda and Zaire in 1994, Northwest Medical Teams was there. In 1996, here in Oregon, after the floods, Northwest Medical Teams was there. As was mentioned, they were the first group allowed into the former Soviet Union in Armenia following the earthquake. In 1991, President George H.W. Bush assigned Northwest Medical Teams as the 403rd of his 1,000 points of light. In 1993, this is an amazing statistic. Money Magazine named Northwest Medical Teams the number 3 best charity in America for its unbelievable 97.1% of every dollar went to where it was supposed to go. He didn't make a lot of money. Ron Post once said, "I have never owned Northwest Medical Teams. It's owned by God and operated by many ordinary but wonderful people who serve the poor." And when he shares these stories with friends, they would often go back to the first. Ron, think about this. If you had not gotten out of your chair that night and moved into action, would all of these people still be alive today? So I ask each of us, will we get out of our comfort zones and do something big for our world? So that's just a few of the stories from the year since its founding by Ron Post in 1979. Ron Post, through the organization he founded, Northwest Medical Teams, now called Medical Teams International, has helped countless thousands and thousands all over the world, including right here in Oregon. This man would not desire accolades. He's embarrassed right now, I can tell you, and I'm sure going to get it later. He would say, "I am only doing the Lord's will." But I am here to say thank you to my dad, Ron Post. Colleagues, I urge and I vote on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Neerman, would you like to close? He does not. Those of the opinion the resolution should be adopted will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Clerk will open the voting system. Representative Kenny Geyer, Kenny Geyer votes aye. Colleagues, I'm sure you are very pleased to have Mr. Post here today, as I am. Thank you so much for everything you've done for the state, for the world. We're glad to have embarrassed you just a little, and we're really pleased to honor you. On behalf of the Oregon House, HCR 23, having received a constitutional majority, is declared adopted.